All right. So let's go ahead and get started with Chapter 10 in the Player's Handbook. Chapter 9 in the Player's Handbook, and Chapter 10 in the free Basic Rules PDF that you can download from Wizards. I'll also have a link to this down below in the comments section that you will be able to go and get the free PDF, and it has all of the rules. These are basically all of the casting rules that are in the Player's Handbook, excluding this little cone chart here. That's in the Player's Handbook. But everything else here that you see is on a free PDF download, and I'll have a link for that down below. So, you guys, there's lots of classes in D&D that can cast spells. There's traditional types of casters. There are hybrid types of casters. And then there are specialty types of casters. That's how I foresee casting in D&D 5e. Now, your traditional types of casters are going to be classes like your bard, your cleric, your druid, your wizard. Those are your traditional types of casters. Then you also have the sorcerer and the warlock. They're traditional, but they have a weird mechanic to the way that they cast spells. I don't want to say weird, though the warlock is a little bit more unorthodox, but they're still spellcasters. Then you have your hybrid spellcasters. And your traditionals, they go from spell level 1 to spell level 9. Even the warlock does. They have their mystic arcanums that take them from mystic arcanum level 6 to level 9. So then you have your hybrid casters, which are your paladin and your ranger. And your hybrid and paladin and hybrid ranger classes, they get to cast spells, but they don't get to cast the full Monty of spells, say that, the cleric would, the druid would, or, say, the wizard. They get up to spell level 5 that they can cast. Now, then you have your specialty types of casting classes. And there's 2 of them in the game so far. And I'm sure by the time D&D 5e is done and they go on to D&D 5.5 or D&D 6 next time, they'll have there will be more classes, I'm sure. But these specialty classes are the Fighter Eldritch Knight and the Arcane Trickster Rogue. And they're not a pure caster class, but they do get to dabble in magic a little bit, and they do have restrictions on what they can cast. So there are quite a few classes that can cast spells in D&D 5e, and I like that they give you this. They give you the opportunity to cast spells in 5e. You think about Dungeons and Dragons. You think about swords, shields, and magic, and what's not better than that? I mean, it's just great. So we'll go ahead and we're going to cover each one of these sections. And each one of these sections, like I said, this is actually from the free PDF from the Wizards of the Coast website, and there will be a link down below. So spellcasting is basically has different things that you have to worry about. You have to worry about the spell level. You have to worry about prepared spells or spells known. You have to worry about spell slots if they apply to your class. You have to worry about upgrading spells from level 1 to level 9 if you can upgrade it. That's another great new feature about D&D 5e and casting spells is now you can take that basic level 1 spell and upgrade it up to 9. It's going to cost you higher spell slots, but hey, you have the freedom to do that. You got to worry about your cantrips. If you have cantrips, you have to worry about your rituals, spells that are tagged rituals. You have to worry about all kinds of other things that involve casting spells, like your casting actions, your standard action. Do you have a bonus action spell that you can have? Is it going to take longer to cast a spell than one action or one bonus action? What is the range of a spell? What are components to a spell? There's verbal, somatic, and then there's material. Well, how do I satisfy these material components? Do I have to go out and kill a bunch of bats for bat shit for the bat guana? Do I have to do that? We'll find out, but there's lots of variables when you're thinking about spells. There's duration. Is it an instant spell? Is it delayed? Do I have to concentrate on this spell? Can I lose my concentration and lose my spell? How many targets does my spell, does it affect one target? Does it affect all the targets in the radius? Does it affect creature? What is a creature? What is an enemy? What is an ally? We're going to learn all this in this tutorial. So, we're going to go over everything from cones to cubes to cylinders to lines to spheres, saving throws, attack DCs, how to calculate your saving throw DC. We're going to do everything. We're going to talk about all the different schools of magic, and I have a bunch of spells down here also that are going to be examples that we're going to use, and I also have a grid down here with a black dragon and a bunch of characters, and we're going to look at the different types of cones and cubes and whatnot. So it's going to be a nice long Spellcasting 101 tutorial. So, alright, so I'm going to grab me a quick drink real quick, and then we're going to get going on this, because I love doing this kind of stuff. Alright, yeah, exactly, Woo Willie. A 5th level Wizard's component pouch is basically all bat guano. Yeah, you're about right for Fireball. That's about right. So, all right, the first thing you got to do is there's your whatever classes you're going to play. All right, like I said, there's your traditional types of classes. Your traditional types of classes like the cleric, the druid, the wizard, the paladin hybrid. They have to worry about a spell pool, and they have to worry about spell slots per day. Then you have the sorcerer, the warlock, the bard, the arcane trickster, the ranger. Those types of classes, they don't have to worry about a memorized pool of spells. They have what's called spells known. And whenever you're looking through all of the great classes in 5e, whether it be a cleric or a sorcerer, you'll see that. And here I'll even pull an example up for you. All right. All right. All right. I'm going to pull out the 5e bard really quick. And I'm going to pull out the 5e cleric. Whoops. Alright. So the bard. Alright, you're going to see that for something like a more traditional type of class, the cleric, it has a daily pool of spells, and you also have levels for spells. So here's your, this is how you can tell. All right, whatever class you choose, you're going to see your spell slots per spell level. That's going to be default for every spell casting class. All right, there's 1st to 9th level spells. All right, like I said, the traditional casters, they get spell level 1 through 9. Your paladin, the ranger, they can only cast up to like level 5. So these are your spell slots. These are how many spells that you can cast per day, per level of how powerful you want your spells to be. All right. Now next, you're going to see a difference here between the cleric and the bard. Okay. So you can see here the cleric, they don't have a spells known. But you look at the bard, at 1st level, they know a total of 4 spells. The cleric doesn't have that. So that's another thing that you have to understand between casting classes. So if you're a cleric, you're going to have a certain amount of spells that you can cast, and these are going to be your prepared pool of spells. And it is right over here, and we're going to look at this right now. All right. So we've already talked about the spell level. And every spell level has a level that it's dedicated to from 0 level to 9th level. And this is basically a general indicator of how powerful of a spell you want it to be. Alright? Some spells you're going to get at 9. Some spells you're going to get at 1. Some spells you're going to get at level 5. So there's a whole list of spells for each one of these classes that you're going to play. Alright? So your 0 level spells, you don't see anything 0. You're going, oh wow, what are these 0 level spells? Well, those are your cantrips. Your cantrips, which we'll talk about in just a second, those are considered cantrips. So, and then here are your 1st to 9th level spells. And you can see the higher level you get, the bigger of an arsenal of spells you're going to have at your disposal. And this is on a daily basis, or until you get a long rest. So that is basically your spell levels. Alright. Now the known and prepared spells. This is the difference that I'm referring to between the cleric and the bard. So spells known is basically like a bard, a sorcerer, a warlock, your arcane trickster rogue. Those types of classes are going to have spells known. These are a total number of spells that you know. So if you're level 5, you know a total of 8 spells. And that's between 1st, 2nd, and 3rd level. That doesn't mean you know 8 1st level spells, 8 2nd level, and 8 3rd. No, that does not mean that. That means that you know a total of 8 spells between 1st, 2nd, and 3rd level. So for a bard, you would really have to choose your spells wisely. But you can replace those spells also, depending on the mechanic of the class. And within each class, it will tell you that you can unscribe spells and put new scrolls, or new spells into your book, as long as you take an old one off, and as long as it meets your casting level that you can cast. Alright, so that's for the known spells. Now let's go over prepared spells. Now, this is the cleric. The cleric is what deals with a prepared pool of spells. Your cleric, your wizard, your druid, your paladin, your traditional types of classes, they're the ones that have a prepared spell list on a daily basis. Now, you have to basically pray to your deity, or in the wizard's case, you literally take your spells out of your spell book. The wizard's sort of like the exception to the rule on this. Not the exception to the rule, but you're basically praying to your gods. This is how you get your spells. The druid, the cleric, the paladin, and the wizard. The wizard doesn't pray to his god, he just prays to his spell book. Because if the wizard doesn't have a spell book, he's pretty much screwed. And if you're playing a wizard, I would really honestly suggest that you have copies of your spells too. Because if you lose your book, you lose your magic. And a wizard with no magic is useless. So you'd probably just jump off of the highest tower that you could find, or maybe buy new spells if you want to do it that way. So there you go. That's the difference between known and prepared. Now, for the traditional types of spells, for your prepared spells, you can have other ways of getting spells, just like it says here, through magic items, or maybe the dungeon master will give you a special boon, a special item, maybe a weapon, maybe a belt, and maybe it'll give you more spells. But I'm just talking mechanically speaking here. This is how you do it. So you're always going to know more and more spells the higher level that you get if you are playing the traditional caster, the cleric, the druid, the wizard, the paladin, because you don't have spells known. I honestly wish they would have just given every class spells known. That would have been so much easier, especially for new players. That's just my opinion, but I do like spells known. It would have been nice if they would have done that for all of the classes, but they didn't, so that's why you have to explain this kind of stuff to new players. So, like I said, for the traditional classes, cleric, paladin, druid, wizard, your spell pool is going to increase as you level. And starting at level 1, you're gonna know a daily amount of spells per day equal to your class level +1. So if you're first level cleric and you have a +3 wisdom modifier, because that's what the cleric's primary casting ability is wisdom, then you would know 4 spells a day, which basically equates out to the bard's 4 spells a day. So it's basically the same thing, as long as you have a +3 wisdom modifier for your cleric. So, and then every level you'll get another pool in your daily pool of spells. So at level 2 you'll have 5 spells. At level 3 you'll have 6 spells. At level 10 you'll have 10 plus your 10 plus your modifier, so probably 13 or 14 if you raised your wisdom score up with an ability score modifier. So your pool of spells will always get bigger. And in a lot of ways, you'll be able to cast more spells. You'll have a bigger variety of spells at your disposal than the sorcerer and the warlock and the arcane trickster rogue and the bard, because they're limited with spells known. You're not going to be you're going to be limited still, but your pool is going to be greater than theirs. So that's the difference between spells known and your traditional casters. So that's how you do it, though. All right, and every time you cast your spell slots, you have to have a long rest before you get them back, which there are exceptions to the rule. You can get trance as an elf. That means that you only need 4 hours instead of 8 hours if you're playing an elf. Or you can have arcane recovery. All wizards get arcane recovery. So that means that you can get back a number of spell slots equal to half your level, I believe with a minimum of 1 or something. So yeah, there's ways to get, but generally speaking, to get your spells back, you're going to need a long rest. And in D&D 5e, it's 8 hours. All right. And now the next thing is you can upgrade spells. So I'm going to get rid of these two here. And you like I said, a great new feature in D&D 5e about spells is you can upgrade these spells. Some upgrade automatically, like most of the cantrips. Other spells like Fireball, Magic Missile, Lightning, you can upgrade those with higher level spell slots. So let's take a look at a couple examples of casting at higher spell levels. So the first one, I have Firebolt. That's pretty much a wizard cantrip. I'm not sure if the sorcerer or the warlock gets that, but I know that the Firebolt is a wizard cantrip. So you're going to see that here's how you read a spell in D&D 5e, all right? They're all laid out the same. You see the format is the same for every single spell. It's an evocation, so it's from the school of evocation. It's a cantrip, so it's considered a 0 level spell. The casting time is 1 action. It has a range of 120 feet. The components are verbal and somatic. We're going to go over that later. It's instant, and basically you hurl a mode of fire at a creature, and it does 1d10 damage. Well, as you get higher levels, you're going to see that this upgrades automatically. So at 5th level, it'll do 2d10 damage. 11th level, it'll automatically do 3d10. And 17th level, it's automatically going to do 4d10 damage. All right, so let's look at Fireball now. All right, Fireball is also upgradable too, but you have to do it. It doesn't do it automatically like this Firebolt cantrip. This is where upgrading your spells to a higher level, this is where it comes into effect. Now, you'll see here that Fireball does a base damage of 8d6 fire damage. This is a 3rd level evocation spell that does fire damage. And you have to be level 5 to cast this spell, because you have to be level 5 to cast 3rd level spells. So, at level 5, you're going to be hurling fireballs with this massive radius at 8d6 fire damage. This is like, Fireball is probably almost every wizard's favorite spell, just about. The wizards just chuck fireballs all over the place. Especially evocation. You can spell sculpt all of your allies out of the damage, so they don't have to worry about making saving throws and stuff, so it's really great. So The upgrade part of this is, hey, do you want to do more than just 8d6 damage? Sure. Now see, at the bottom of the spells, you'll notice that at higher levels, when you cast this fireball spell using a spell slot of 4th level or higher, the damage increases by 1d6 for each slot above 3rd. So, if you are, say you're level 9, you can cast level 5 spells. Say you want to take one of your level 5 spell slots and cast it as a fireball. You can do that. You would upgrade this. So you would, not cast it as 3rd level. You would cast it at 5th level. Deduct your 5th level spell slot for for your day, how many you have, and then you would upgrade this. So instead of doing 8d6 damage, you're going to do an additional 2d6 damage because you upgraded it from 3rd to 4th to 5th. So instead of 8d6 fire damage, you're going to be doing 10d6 fire damage now. So more damage. And you can even go up to, you get 1 9th level spell slot. If you want to throw a 9th level spell slot fireball, go for it. Then you would do 3rd, and then you would add d6 for 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So you would take 8d6 and add another 6d6 for a total of 14d6 fire damage with a 9th level spell. How cool is that, man? You don't get to do this in previous editions. This is a great new mechanic about D&D 5e. It's great. Alright, so the types of spells. Now that we've gone through, spells known, your daily pool of spells, spell levels, taking your spells and upgrading them to higher spell levels, let's talk about the different types of spells, which we look here at Firebolt. It is a cantrip. And a cantrip is a spell that can be cast at will without using a spell slot and without being prepared in advance. Basically, you can cast Firebolt every single round for the entirety of your character, and it will never eat a 1st level spell slot, because it is considered a cantrip, which is equal to a 0 level spell. Alright? And the cantrips, you've practiced these so much as an apprentice in your tower that you've seared it into your mind, and that's why you're able to cast it at will. And those are the cantrips. And each class has a pretty nice selection of cantrips that they can cast. So next up, we'll talk about the rituals. So what is a ritual? Alright, you're going to see here that certain spells are going to have a tag on them. Now, a couple of these spells, you're going to see that Detect Magic is a 1st level divination spell that can be cast as a ritual. Alright? Identify. It can be cast as a ritual. Illusory Script. It can be cast as a ritual. Now, most of your evocation damage spells, Magic Missile, Fireball, Lightning Bolt, Scorching Ray, those cannot be cast as rituals. Alright? Rituals are certain spells that have the special tag like I just showed you, okay? Such a spell can be cast following the normal rules for spellcasting, or the spell can be cast as a ritual. So what that means is, if you want to cast it as we'll take Detect Magic. It's a 1st level divination spell. If you want to burn one of your spell slots, fine, go for it. You don't have to cast it as a ritual. Just make sure it's in your daily pool of spells, or make sure it's in your spells known. Then you can cast it. And then you deduct your spell slot, your 1st level spell slot, okay? That's what that means. Now, if you want to cast it as its ritual version, it will not take your spell slot off. So you'll still get to keep your 1st level spell slot. So how do you get to do that, and what is the difference? Well, this is a difference. The ritual version of the spell takes 10 minutes longer to cast than normal. So this spell here, Detect Magic, instead of being an instant, 1 action, it would take 10 minutes and 1 action. So basically just 10 minutes. You don't have to get so technical and say, alright, 10 minutes, and now I'm going to burn my action. Just 10 minutes, okay? Make life easy on yourself and just make it 10 minutes. So as long as you concentrate, you perform a ritual, it'd be a pretty cool RP. A pretty good opportunity for you to RP it out how you're going to cast this ritual. Maybe you decorate maybe a rune on the ground. You etch, you put some salts into the ground and light them on fire, or use some kind of prestidigitation to make them smell good, or maybe you can, maybe light the salt on fire, and you can do like have an opportunity for some role play casting a ritual. That would be pretty cool. DMs eat that stuff up, guys. So the more that you RP, believe me, DMs appreciate it, and it doesn't happen enough, which I really wish it would. So when you do your ritual, you spend your 10 minutes casting. It does not expend your spell slots, which means the ritual version of the spell cannot be cast at a higher level. It just is cast at its minimum level. All right, so that's pretty much everything to do with rituals. All right. So now let's talk about the different when you cast a spell. Let's talk about the casting times. Let's talk about the ranges of the spell. Let's talk about the components, the durations. Let's talk about all that good stuff now. So, all right. And like I said, with the rituals, guys, one last thing. I just want to kind of reiterate it. Just make sure that the spell says ritual, all right? If it says ritual, then that means that it can be cast as a ritual. 10 minutes. You can see that Detect Magic can identify an illusory script. Those can be cast as rituals. Your damage spells, Magic Missile, Fireball, they can't. They actually literally take your spell slots. So there you go. That's everything to do with the rituals. All right. So now let's get into the meat of casting spells, and there's your casting times. This is huge, and a lot of people don't realize a few of the rules inside of the casting time. So you're going to notice that most spells require a single action to cast, but some spells require different types of actions, like a reaction or maybe a bonus action. So we're going to go over each one of these different types of actions. All right. Your standard type of spell that you want to cast is something like Magic Missile, Fireball, Scorching Ray, Lightning Bolt. You'll see that all of these spells have a casting time of one action. Okay, one action. Every one of these have a casting time of one action. That takes your standard action and allows you to cast a spell. Aiden, 8ET, thank you very much for the follow, Aiden. I appreciate it. Welcome to the community. So, Magic Missile takes one action, okay? On your round, when it's your turn in a combat situation, you get several types of actions. You get one standard action, you get one bonus action, if you can even do anything as a bonus action, and you get movement. And of course you get free actions too, like you can drop something, or you can, as part of your movements, you can take out a potion, or you can, pull an item out of a bag. You can, but generally speaking, you get movement. It's not considered an action anymore because you can break your movement up in 5e, which really makes movement powerful now. In other editions, once you moved, you were done, but not in 5e. So you can cast a spell, move, and cast another spell. That's how powerful 5e is. But you have to meet the requirements to do that. So your first standard action spells, those are pretty much your big spells, your spell slot spells. Magic Missile, Fireball, any other spell that has the one action tag on it. All right, that's your standard action type of spell. Now, there's also a bonus action type of spell. And a bonus action spell is a spell cast that is very swiftly cast. You must use a bonus action on your turn to cast a spell, provided that you haven't already taken your bonus action this turn. Like I said, you get one bonus action on your turn. All right, and you cannot use. And here's like one of the most underestimated rules of spellcasting that a lot of people don't even know about, and I'm going to circle this. And I did this last time. This is for bonus action heals. All right, I'm going to circle this right here. If you learn anything tonight, I hope you learned this, and if you didn't know this, a lot of you out there probably don't even know this. If you cast a bonus action spell, and an example of a bonus action spell is right here, Healing Word. There are not a lot of bonus action spells. There are very few bonus action spells. But if you have Healing Word, you see that the casting time is 1 bonus action. Alright? Doesn't take an action, it takes a bonus action. So, if you cast and use your 1 bonus action in the round, this means that you cannot cast another spell during the same turn, except if it is labeled a cantrip with a casting time of 1 action. So, you can cast Healing Word, but you cannot cast Cure Wounds. Cure Wounds is a 1 action spell. Alright, it is not a cantrip. It is a level 1 spell that can be upgraded up to 9th level. So, Healing Word, if you use bonus action, you have to use a cantrip, which in the clerics, cleric, we'll just say that it's a cleric. The cleric cast Healing Word, which Healing Word has a range of 60 feet. So we'll say that the cleric cast on another character that was 50 feet away to heal him. Alright, so the bonus action has been used. The cleric needs to run and get into an advantageous position to cast a spell. So now the cleric moves up to his movement, probably between 25 and 30 feet, and then the cleric tries to cast another spell, and the only spell that the cleric can cast would be a cantrip, like one action cantrip, which would be basically Sacred Flame, Spare the Dying, something like that. Alright, so that doesn't mean that you can cast Cure Wounds either. Alright, it just doesn't mean that you can cast 2 spell slot spells. You can cast a cantrip and a bonus action spell slot. It's a rule that's overlooked, and I've seen it in streams. I've seen it in a lot of other blog games that I've watched online. I've seen it here on Twitch. But if you're gonna make sure you do this first. Now, say if you cast, say if you're the cleric and you run up to someone and you cast Cure Wounds, you have to touch the person. Cure Wounds is a touch. Okay, it has no range. You have to touch the person. We'll say that you grope the target and you touch him and you heal that person. Now, you know that the wizard on the other side of the room is in bad shape too. You can run towards the wizard, hopefully not taking attack of opportunity on your way, but you won't be able to cast another cure. You won't be able to cast Healing Word, because Healing Word is, you can't cast more than 1 spell slot per round. So the only other thing that you could do is literally attack with your action, or you could take your action and cast Sacred Flame, which would be a cantrip. So that's it. So that's why I'm putting a lot of emphasis on this, because a lot of people don't even know about this little hidden rule here under bonus action. So, all right. So reactions. Some spells can be cast as reactions, and these spells take a fraction of a second to bring about and are cast in response to some event. So basically, something triggers the reaction, and a good spell to use as an example for a reaction is Shield, a wizard spell. I believe sorcerers can use it, but it's a first level abjuration spell, and the casting time is a reaction. So you only get 1 reaction a round. So if an orc runs by you previously before your turn, well, you haven't, if you take an attack of opportunity, that's a reaction. So if you take your attack of opportunity on something running by you, then you can't use your reaction to cast your shield. So you really want to make sure that you're in a good position to use your reaction. Maybe hold off on using a reaction, because if you got other things coming your way, like shield is detrimental for a mage's or a wizard's arsenal, because it basically, when you're hit by an attack or targeted by the magic missile spell, that's your reaction. You can use it. So if you get pummeled by a 5 dart magic missile, the wizard can just use his or her reaction, to negate that magic missile damage and take none at all. Or if it gets hit by a weapon attack, whether it be a ranged weapon or a melee weapon, then the shield will grant the wizard a +5 AC bonus, including that attack that just hit. So it could actually kind of reflect that attack away. So you want to make sure, as a wizard, you want to save your reactions. You really want to. And you really want to have shield, because shield is a lifesaver. I mean, it truly is. So that's an example of a reactionary type of spells, of a spell, okay? Now, then there's spells that require a longer casting time. And certain spells, including spells cast as rituals, require more time to cast. Some are minutes, some are even hours, like, raising the dead and stuff. So when you cast a spell with a casting time longer than a single action or reaction, you must spend your action each turn casting the spell. Doesn't mean you can run around, doesn't mean you can do anything bonus action. You have to take basically your entire action and maintain and concentrate on casting that spell. All right, and if you get hit, then you're going to have to make a Constitution saving throw, which we'll go over here in just a couple minutes. And you could lose your concentration. So you really have to watch casting longer, casting time types of spells. And an example of a longer casting time spell would be the Illusory Script down here. It's a first level illusion, and it can be cast as a ritual, and the casting time of this is 1 minute. So, to go back, kind of touch base on ritual a little bit, if you were going to cast this as a ritual, then it would be 11 minutes, because it would be 10 plus the casting time. So, it would literally take 11 minutes, and then you wouldn't take any spell slots away. So you could cast Illusory Script. That's just as an example of a longer cast time. All right. So that's pretty much it. And like I said, when you're casting a spell with a longer cast time, just make sure that you may have to make some concentration checks. There's some concentration saving throws. All right, because if you get hit, you have to try to maintain your concentration. All right, so let's talk about about casting spells in armor. All right, just don't think that you're going to buy plate mail and be able to cast in it. Now, there are exceptions to that. If you're a dwarf, or if you're a war priest cleric, you get proficiency in heavy armor. Or if you're a dwarf, you can wear heavy armor. So if you're casting in armor, because of the mental focus and precise gestures required for spellcasting, you must be proficient with the armor you are wearing to cast a spell. If you are not proficient in that armor, then you are otherwise too distracted and physically hampered by your armor for spellcasting. So yes, technically you could make a wizard into a sword mage with heavy armor, a two-handed sword, a spell pouch to cast spells, and all this other stuff. But you have to be proficient in any type of armor you're using to cast spells. And just like the rule says, if you're not proficient in that armor, you simply are too distracted and you can't cast it. Straightforward, all right? So let's talk about the range of spells. All right, the next thing we'll talk about is the range of spells. So, the target of a spell must be within the spell range of a spell. All right, let's look at a few examples of the spell template, and we'll look at the different ranges of spells. Healing Word, we already went over, has a 60-foot range. Fireball, 150-foot range. Magic Missile, 120-foot range. There's even Meteor Storm that has a 1-mile range. So you can be a mile away on the top of a hill and cast Meteor Swarm on a town a mile away. That's your range. Some have self. Like Bark Skin, you got to touch yourself. That's the range. Shield, it's self only. 120 feet for Firebolt. So those are examples of different types of ranges, all right? most are, like I said, most are explained in feat, like your evocation magic spells. But there's, your shield's abjuration, that's self. Your bark skin, you touch yourself, that's transmutation. So those are the different ranges, right? And then there's spells that also, have a range with an effect on it too. So you could have Fireball, for instance. Fireball, you cast 150 feet and then have a 20-foot radius circle, which is about this size here, at the end of 150 feet. So you don't even have to be anywhere near this blast casting Fireball. So that that's to go with range also. So you could be way down here as a wizard and cast this thing 150 feet away, which each one of these grids would be 5 feet. So you could literally cast this thing off of the grid if you wanted to, and explode a fireball in the force and catch the fireball, catch the force on fire if you wanted to. So that's how you deal with range in D&D 5e. All right. So let's go ahead and now we're going to talk about another very important spellcasting little quirk in the mechanics of spellcasting, and that's components. All right, components are overlooked a lot, especially the material components. All right, so there's 3 types of components. There's verbal, which is you see here on all of these spells, on all of these spell templates. There is a component. V is verbal, S is semantic, and M is for materials. All right. Verbal, most spells require the chanting of mystic words. The words themselves are not the source of the spell's power, rather the particular combination of sounds which specify the pitch and the resonance, and that sets the threads of magic into motion, combusting the spell. So verbal is pretty much just about in every single spell. Basically, hocus pocus, or whatever your keyword is to cast your spell, whatever verbal words that you cast to speak your spell. All right. So here's the thing: if your character is gagged or silenced, like the Beholder has an anti-magic shell or a silent shell, then you can't cast. If you cannot fulfill the V part of your spell, if you're bound and gagged, you're not going to you're not going to be able to satisfy the somatic or the verbal part of it. So you really have to pay attention to what the components are of the spell, guys. Because if you're gagged, you can't fulfill the verbal part of your spell, so you won't be able to cast it unless you have some kind of feat that you can still cast it, which there are options out there for you. But I'm talking just general mechanics of the rules. You aren't able to cast it. So, somatic is everything labeled S. You can see here, Fireball takes S. Magic Missile takes S. Scorching Ray takes S. Lightning Bolt S. Identify S. Everything's basically S almost. Just about everything. Now, that is somatic, and that's the waving of your hands. All right. Spellcasting gestures might include a forceful gesticulation or an intricate set of gestures. If a spell requires a semantic or S component, the spellcaster must have free hands of at least one hand free to perform the gestures. Okay. So if you're bound, if your hands are bound behind your back, you're not going to be able to perform the S part of your spell. That's just the way it's going to be. All right. If you're bound and gagged, you can't satisfy the V or the S, like I already said. Now here's the big one: is the material part of spells. The material part. All right. Material. Big confusion with this also. Almost a bit as big as a confusion as the bonus action filibuster here. Almost as big, but not as big. This is the big one right here. Make sure, and that's why I got it circled, make sure you read bonus action several times in the Player's Handbook. That's so important, guys. So important. All right, so the material part of casting a spell requires you to have particular objects specified in parentheses in the component entry on the, here it is, on the spell template. Perfect example. M, Magic Missile takes no material. Scorching Ray, none. Fireball, M, requires a tiny ball of bat guano and sulfur. All right? That means that you have to have that component. All right? Now, there's two ways that you can satisfy this tiny ball of bat shit and sulfur. There's two ways. You can have a component pouch, which you can get in the equipment section. I believe it's in chapter 6 in the Player's Handbook. And the component pouch will automatically fulfill your M portion of your spell, as long as it doesn't have a gold piece or monetary value to it. All right? Your spellcasting focus. Every spellcasting class has a particular focus. In other editions, like 4th edition, they were called implements. All right? Your spellcasting focus does not give you any kind of bonus damage. It does not give you any kind of bonus to hit. All the spellcasting focus does is satisfies the material part of your spell. That's all it does. And a couple examples of the spellcasting focus would be like a holy symbol for a paladin or a cleric. Maybe a twig branch for a druid. Maybe some type of arcanic rune for a mage. Maybe a wand. Maybe a staff. So, spellcasting focus, like I said, no bonuses on spell to hit, damage, nothing like that. It just satisfies the material components. All right. Anything that doesn't have a monetary value or cost. Now, there are a couple exceptions to this. All right. Well, not exceptions, but I want to show you the difference. Now, see, Fireball, your tiny ball of bat guano and sulfur, doesn't have a monetary value. So your your spellcasting focus or your spellcasting pouch will satisfy the guano and sulfur. Now, when you look at this, this illusory script again, or if you look at Identify, these do have material components also. Like Identify has a pearl worth at least 100 gold pieces and an owl feather. So you have to have a pearl worth 100 gold pieces on you. You just have to have it on you. This spell does not consume it. All right, it will tell you if it consumes the money or the item or whatever. In this case, for Identify, it does not. Now, your spellcasting component pouch or your focus will take care of the owl feather. But you have to worry about casting Identify. You have to have that 100 gold piece pearl on you. Now, illusory script. You have to have a lead base inked worth at least 10 gold pieces. Now, if you have that, then the illusory script, if you cast it as a spell slot, or if you cast it as a ritual, it will consume that 10 gold pieces worth of lead-based ink. So it is very descriptive, and it will tell you if it does or if it does not, eat up the material component that you have to have. So there you go, guys. That's everything with basically verbal, somatic, and material. All right. Just make sure you read the description of the spells. It has everything there for you. All right, so we're chugging along here. Let's talk about the duration of spells. All right. Now, the spell's duration is the length of time the spell persists. A duration can be expressed in rounds, minutes, hours, or even years. Some spells specify that their effects last until the spells are dispelled or destroyed. So, we will go ahead and look at an instantaneous type of spell. You're going to see here on all of these spell templates, the next thing that we're talking about is the duration. Every spell template has a duration on there. And you can see that Firebolt is instantaneous. That Firebolt happens automatically. Your shield lasts for 1 round. Magic Missile is instant. Fireball, instant. Healing Word, it is instantaneous. Lightning Bolt, instantaneous. Scorching Ray, instant. Mage Armor, lasts for 8 hours if you touch yourself. You touch yourself and it lasts for 8 hours. That's goodness for 8 hours. Bark Skin, you have to be concentrating up to 1 hour. It's everything is right there. There's really no need to explain this. 1 minute. Concentration up to 10 minutes. Instantaneous. The Illusory Script lasts 10 days. Alright? So that's the duration. Instantaneous, they're instant. Basically the evocation spells that harm, heal, create, or alter a creature or an object in a way that cannot be dispelled because its magic exists only for an instant. Alright? So those are the durations. Now let's talk about concentration. We've talked about concentration a couple times now. Now, concentration, some spells have concentration. We've already saw a couple of them. Bark Skin requires concentration. Detect Magic requires concentration. Alright? That means there's a chance that you could lose concentration and lose your spell. So some spells require you to maintain concentration in order to keep their spell magic active. If you lose concentration, that spell ends. Alright? If a spell must be maintained with concentration, that fact appears in the duration entry, which we've already looked at, and the spell specifies how long you can concentrate on it. Alright, we've already done that. You can end concentration at any time as a free action. It won't cost you anything. So you can end concentration if you want to. Now, normal activity, such as moving and attacking, does not interfere with concentration. And so if you're moving around, if say for instance, if you have your concentration spell up, if you have Mage Armor up, alright? No, I'm sorry, not Mage Armor, but say that you have Bark Skin up. I'm sorry, not Mage Armor, but Bark Skin. You have Bark Skin on yourself, and this means basically that you're concentrating. You have to concentrate to keep this up for the maximum duration, which is 1 hour. Okay? Just like this says. You can move, you can attack, you can cast other spells, you can do anything you want and still maintain your concentration. But there are 3 things that will break your concentration. Alright, and we're going to go over those right now. And a possible 4th too, that we'll touch on at the end. So, casting another spell that requires concentration. So, if you are casting your Bark Skin, and then all of a sudden you want to cast Detect Magic, sure, you cast Detect Magic, but you lose your concentration on Bark Skin, because now your concentration is on a new spell, which would be Detect Magic. So that would be one way for you to lose concentration. But I'm sure you would probably know that in advance, or maybe have a brain fart and say, oops. But that's one way that you can lose concentration, okay? Basically, the primary way that you're going to lose your concentration is taking damage. And whenever you take damage while you are concentrating on a spell, you are going to need to make that Constitution saving throw that I was talking about earlier to be able to maintain your concentration on your spell. So, what do I need to make the saving throw against? Well, that's easy. Here it is. The DC for your concentration check, your Constitution saving throw, for your concentration check, say that real quick 10 times. The DC will equal 10 or half the damage you take, whichever number is higher. So if you get hit by if you fail your dexterity saving throw and you get hit for 35 damage, or we'll say 40 damage on a fireball, alright, you're going to need to make a saving throw. So the DC will be 10 or half of the damage, which would be 20, because that's half of 40, and it would have to be the higher number. So you would have to make a 20 Constitution saving throw, because that's a pretty big blast. Chances are you probably fail it, unless you totally rolled high, which you could. You could make it. A crit would always maintain concentration. So there you go. DC of either 10 or half the damage that you took. Whatever is higher. All right. And if you take damage from multiple sources, this is important too, such as an arrow, and then maybe like a Dragon's Breath, you're going to need to make separate saving throws for each source of damage. All right. And the third way of losing concentration is a pretty easy one, pretty straightforward. If you're incapacitated or killed, so you lose concentration if you go unconscious or if you die outright. And sort of like the little fourth one that I was talking about, the DM can also make you do a Constitution saving throw for terrain or environmental effects also, like maybe an earthquake. Or maybe, like the example here is a wave crashing over you. You're gonna have to make some kind of Constitution saving throw for that to maintain your concentration on a spell, point blank. So there you go. Let's go ahead and talk about targets. All right, targets basically these are typical spells require you to pick one or more targets to be affected by the spell's magic, and it will be in the spell's description. In each spell. So everything is going to tell you. All right, if it's going to be one target, you could, like Magic Missile, you create glowing darts of magical force. Each dart will hit a creature of your choice that you can see within the 120-foot range. So Magic Missile, you can cast on different creatures. Fireball, you have your point. You send it to the range. That's it. I mean, that's basically the targets. You can place those anywhere you want. Scorching Ray, same thing. You blast 3 rays of fire from your hand. You can, hurl them at one target or several targets. It'll tell you. In the descriptions, it will tell you. Mage Armor. You touch a willing creature who is not wearing armor, and you'll get an AC of 13 plus Dex. So that's the targets. Make sure you have a clear path to the target. Make sure it's not behind total cover. All right. Targeting yourself like bark skin. All right. This means that you choose yourself. Unless you're a Beastmaster Ranger, then your pet will also get bark skin, because anything that you get, your companion or your beast will also get, but that's not until higher levels for the Beastmaster Ranger. So that's targeting yourself. Now let's go ahead and talk about areas of effect. All right. Well, first off, let's go ahead and talk about the different schools of magic. All right. We're not going to really go over them. I mean, abjuration spells, they're basically protective spells. Conjuration spells are like transportation type of spells. Divination spells are spells that basically reveal information. Your enchantment spells, basically it infects the minds of targets. Evocation, basically raw damage spells. Illusion spells, spells of illusory. Necromancy, basically necrotic damage, the negative energies of life. Basically transmutation spells change the properties of a creature, object, or environment. So there's lots of different schools of magic, and the wizard has an archetype for every type of school of magic. All right. So let's go ahead and talk about the cones, the cubes, the cylinders, the lines, the spheres, and all that good stuff. And we'll come down here to our battle map that I have here, okay? I have all kinds of cool things here. So let's go ahead and we'll do one of these at a time. Don't forget, when you're doing your area of effects stuff, they are going to have either a point. There's always a point of origin, okay? The point of origin there's a point of origin on every type of area of effects spell. All right, and basically, it affects everything: the cone, the cube, cylinder, line, and the sphere. All right, and the point of origin is reflected on what you're using. So basically, there's different rules for each shape on where the origin is and where the origin is of use. Some spells will say on you. So, some will have a point of origin, like Fireball, 150 feet. Then you can place your point of origin 150 feet, up to 150 feet away from you. So just make sure that you always are aware of the point of origin, all right? So let's go ahead and go over each one. The cone. And you can see here's the cone, and I'll kind of increase the cone right here. You see here's the dunce cap. That's the cone. This is a cone right here. All right. All right. We'll say that's a good old cone there. We'll put the good old black dragon here, the gargantuan 4x4 dragon here. All right. We'll have our wizard here. That's the point of origin. See that point? That's the point of origin. Because as you see here, there's the point of origin at the tip of the dunce cap. That's what I call it. All right. At the tip of the dunce cap. The cone extends in a direction you choose from its point of origin. A cone's width at a given point along its length is equal to that point's distance from the point of origin. A cone's area of effect specifies its maximum length. A cone's point of origin is not included in a cone's area of effect. It's on the very end, as you can see here. All right, and that's the cone. And we'll say that this is a 15-foot dragon breath. We'll say that this is a dragonborn, and it's a 15-foot cone. Right? Places the point of origin here, and as you can see, it affects the dragon. So the dragon would be would be in the point of origin. All right, it would be in the blast area. All right, let's say that the wizard here, or the dragonborn, whatever, used burning hands this way. There's 15 foot. It would affect both of these creatures. It would not affect this creature here, or the dragon behind it. All right, it's only 15 feet, and you can see that if this female was up here, then the female would not be affected, even though it's 15 feet, because of the way that the cone is shaped. It's 15 feet. All right, because you always take diagonals into consideration. All right, so there is the cone. That's the first one. The second one, let's go ahead and look at the cube. You can see here, perfect example is Thunder Wave. All right, the point of origin is on the side wall, on the outer side of the wall of the cube. All right, so the cube. Let's read about the cube. You select a cube's point of origin, which lies anywhere on a face of the cubic effect. The cube size is expressed as the length of each side. A cube's point of origin is not included in the cube's area of effect. It is on the outside unless you decide otherwise. So it's pretty straightforward. We're going to use this as our cube, okay? And we're going to say that we'll say that here is the mage. Remember, the point of origin for the cube is on the middle of the wall, and it can be any wall any wall that's directly facing you. So this is what it would look like. All right. It would affect all three of these players, or all three of these creatures in the blast. All right. Good old Thunderwave. Just one example. I mean, Thunderwave is different, but I'm just trying to give you what the cube would be. You know, your point of origin is right here where I'm pinging. All right, it's literally on the side of the wall, and it would be here, or here, okay, or here, or here. Those are the only ways. That's the only way that you can cast a cube. You can't do it diagonally. You can't do it like this. All right. We're not doing blast like in D&D 4th edition. This is how the cube is done. Point of origin is on the side wall. All right. So that's the cube. Let's look at the cylinder. Now the cylinder and the sphere, kind of the same thing. All right. So the cylinder, which you can see here, it basically has a point of origin on the bottom and extends up for as high as the spell says it extends up. All right, and you can see that the point of origin for the cylinder is in the very bottom of the radius of the spell of the circle. So the cylinder's point of origin is in the center of a circle of a particular radius as given in the spell description. The circle must either be on the ground or at the height of the spell effect. The energy is a cylinder. The energy in a cylinder expands in straight lines from the point of origin to the perimeter of the circle, forming the base of the circle. Forming the base of the cylinder. Then the spell's effect shoots up from the base or down from the top, whatever you want. If you want to put the point of origin at the top or at the bottom, the energy will shoot either up or shoot down, depending on where you have your point of origin, equal to the distance of the height of the cylinder. And a cylinder's point of origin is included in the area of effect. So unlike the cone and the cube, where the point of origin is not, the cylinder, you can see the point of origin is inside of the area of effect. So here it is. We'll just use this as an example. This will be a 20-foot radius, which is basically 40 foot across. All right, the radius. Now, if the point is at the bottom, then it would shoot up 40 feet. If it's at the top, you could set it 40 feet up. It will shoot down 40 feet. That's basically what a cylinder does, and it's right there. That's the diagram for it. All right. Self-explanatory. It's really easy, guys. Lines. Let's talk about the good old line. Let's talk about these dragon attacks, shall we? So a line extends from its point of origin in a straight path up to its length and covers an area defined by its width. A line's point of origin is not included in the line's area of effect unless you decide otherwise. Okay, so let's go ahead and open up our Monster Manual, and I'm going to go to the Black Dragon. All right. One of my favorite dragons, the Black Dragon. All right, so as you can see, here's the line. The point of origin is not part of the line. It's on the outskirts. And there you go. All right, so let's get our line here. Now for the dragon, we'll say that the dragon's here, fixing to breathe its acid breath, which its acid breath is in a 10-foot wide line, up to 90 feet. 10 foot wide. 90 feet. All right. We'll say that all these guys are, running in a line straight towards the dragon, and the dragon turns towards them and breathes. It would be, we'll say that the point is here, all right, 10 foot wide, 90 foot, and you can see that this line of acid, this stream of acid, goes all the way off the end of the map. That's a lot of coverage. So, and you can see that these tokens are spread apart, and they all are affected. So that is a line attack. You can do it diagonal. You can do it any way that you want to do it. So, all right, that's your 10 foot wide diagonal. So that would be a line attack. All right. Everything basically in these two squares here. These two squares, that square, these two squares, the square, these two squares, 1, 2, 1, 2. Basically how it goes. All right. That's a line attack. There you go. Next one is the sphere. Pretty much the same thing as the cylinder, but the sphere doesn't have 2 points of origin. The sphere's point of origin is included in the sphere's area of effect, but there's no ascending or descending, depending if you want to put a point up here or a point in the bottom, like there is on the sphere. So on the cylinder. So the sphere is basically like a circle radius, basically. All right, basically like Fireball. All right, and that's pretty much all of the area of effects. All right. Now the last thing I want to talk about is two very, very, very important things that I don't want you guys, shortchanging yourself when you're figuring out all of your different stats and your saving throw DC, your spell attack. So these are the most two important for any caster, and that is your saving throw DC and your attack, spell attack bonus to hit. All right, so your saving throw, there's a formula involved. It's really easy. It is 8 plus your spellcasting ability modifier. So for the wizard it would be intelligence, for the druid would be wisdom, for the cleric would be wisdom, the warlock would be charisma, I think warlock's charisma, the bard would be charisma. So you would do it 8 plus your spellcasting ability modifier plus your proficiency bonus. Your proficiency bonus will always scale up depending what level you are. So usually, you know, if you have, say you're a level 1 character, you're still that same +3 wisdom cleric that we talked about earlier, figuring out your pool of spells. We'll take that same cleric and use it as an example. So to figure out your saving throw DC, you would have an 8 plus your wisdom modifier, which is 3, which would be 11, and then plus you're seeing at your first level, you automatically get a +2 proficiency that is universal between all classes in D&D 5e. So that would be a 13 spell DC. All right, and your spell DC will go up. It will go up not from the base of 8, but it will go up every time that you raise your wisdom. Either you use an ability score improvement, or if you have a magic item that increases it, or whatever. And also your proficiency bonus will go up at 1, 5, 9, up to 16. You'll have +6. So you can actually have a pretty nice saving throw DC just without just maxing out your stat, your ability score at +5 for a 20 wisdom would yield you a +5 ability modifier, and your +6 plus your base of 8 would be 8 plus 5 is 13 plus 9 plus 6 is 19. So you could actually at level 16 or so you could have a you could have a 19 save DC, which is pretty nice. And then all you have to do is just to figure out your attack roll. Most spells that use your spell attack roll, it's always versus armor class for the most part. And all you do is you just take your spellcasting ability modifier and add it to your proficiency. Just take the base of 8 out. That's all you do. It's the same thing as your saving throw DC, but just take the base 8 out. So, you'll have it, your level 1 cleric, you'll have your 3 for your ability modifier, your 2 for your proficiency, giving you a +5 at level 1. Then at level 16, you'll have that +11 to hit. So there you go. That's everything with spellcasting, everybody. That's Spellcasting 101. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I enjoy doing this stuff, but I can't reiterate enough, guys, really. Make sure you read the bonus action. Just make sure if you cast a bonus action spell, make sure the only other spell that you cast for an action would be a cantrip. All right, that's it. And also watch out for your material components. Make sure none of the spells have a gold piece value type of item, like identify needs you to have 100 gold piece pearl. If you don't, you just simply cannot cast identify. All right. So there you go, everybody. I hope you guys enjoyed it. So feel free to leave a comment down below. And thanks, guys. I appreciate it.